Since the start of COVID-19, we have seen countries, including Singapore, impose increasingly stringent measures. Just over the weekend, after the first deaths from COVID were reported here, Singapore announced that it will be further tightening its borders. All short-term visitors will no longer be allowed to enter or transit through Singapore from 11:59 p.m. today. This follows other measures, including rigorous contact tracing, quarantine and home isolation orders, and stricter social distancing recommendations. In light of all these measures, how important is personal hygiene and cleanliness in dealing with COVID-19? So, Minister, as chair of the new SG Clean Task Force, maybe you could start.
When the COVID-19 came out, even not so big in Singapore, we already in the ministry saw the opportunity to heighten our society to the need to maintain, in fact, upkeep personal hygiene. But more importantly, we also saw the necessity for our cleaning companies to also increase the standards with which they are cleaning the premises. And we started with that. We heightened our cleaning companies to look at what they can do in a normal case, not in sanitizing places where they have cases, but in places where there are high traffic, in places where people eat together, come together. That was the genesis of the SG Clean campaign. And then later on, we saw also the need to do three other things, apart from just increasing the standard of cleanliness that's supposed to be maintained by our cleaning companies. One is to also inform the public that they too have a very big part as the first line of defense in the fight against this COVID-19, and that is their personal hygiene. Because if we can practice our personal hygiene to a better and higher standard, maintain that will not only help us to fight COVID-19, but also for future viruses when we have to face them. And then the other thing we also want to imprint on our society is the need to also adjust our social norms. Some for now and some for good. So where social norms is concerned, we want everyone to know that in certain specific settings, there are certain social norms that you want to do, for example, hawker centers, places of worship, and so forth. Each of them must implement new social norms for these new circumstances. And then as we move on, we also have to know that some of these social norms are here to stay.
So people as the first line of defense.
Absolutely.
So Edward, you are chair of the Public Hygiene Council. Maybe you would like to chime in on this?
Okay, I think Minister has said everything really in the beginning, but I'll give a little bit more of a background leading to SG Clean, the manner of speaking. I think last year already there was already talk between NEA, MEWR and public hygiene how to raise the standards in terms of sanitation and public hygiene. So that's already ongoing in a way. Am I right, Minister?
That's right.
Yes, we were all going. And I think we were looking at how we could cover all aspects of our society, including the first line of defense, as you mentioned, and looking at premises as well. So this was ongoing, and then COVID-19 came about. So that gave us a timely opportunity to increase and to enhance and to jumpstart this whole process as what Minister has talked now, SG Clean. So that is the background of how it's come to this stage now. And at the same time, whilst that SG Clean has got the precautionary measures to be taken, we are still going ahead with or without COVID, we will still continue with raising the standards of public hygiene and personal hygiene. And that will be a long-term plan that we will have, that we will take on in the years ahead of us.
Since Edward has mentioned, he's opened up the secret of how he started this. I want to also then say, actually, one of the real genesis behind this was actually the incidence of gastroenteritis, people having symptoms of food poisoning, especially in places where people are vulnerable, like childcare centers and then also senior care homes. And we were perplexed why this was happening place after place. And then we came to the conclusion after a number of investigation that it has to do with how the cleanliness, clean up after a vomiting has happened or this incidence, food poisoning has happened in the places. And then we saw that there's a need to basically increase the standard of cleanliness to train our cleaning forces about what it means and how to do the cleaning of places for this specific incident of gastroenteritis. And this somehow just segued well into what we need to do today. And so SG Clean was born out of something that we thought we need to address, and now become something that we can use for something we need to address, which is a bigger problem that we are all facing today.
So I guess for both these cases, it really highlights the importance of environmental contamination. Right? So Prof. Wang, can you just share with us from the scientific point of view, what do we know about the coronavirus so far, and how can public hygiene and disinfection routines help get rid of viruses lingering on surfaces?
Yeah, I think it's very relevant, right? So we already know now the main form of transmission is actually through droplet or contact, right? So that contact can be handshaking, but that contact also can be you lift the button, you go from, open the door, the same button, if somebody push and you push. So this is really, in the context of hygiene, that I think not only that you clean the surface, many of the hygiene liquid and gels, and also the disinfectants, like the minister just said, in a hawk center or somewhere, that if you have an incident after that, you need to really clean well. That not only really provide a clean environment, but we know that coronavirus is what we call is an enveloped virus. So the virus actually have a lipid membrane outside, and to maintain the intactness of the virus, you need to maintain the lipid. And so many of the cleaning agents actually can dissolve this lipid. And so that's why I think it's very important, we wash our hands, either with soap or sanitizer, or 70% ethanol now is being used to spray. All of these will not only clean the environment in the general sense, but more specifically for this COVID-19, you can actually disrupt the virus and then prevent the transmission. So it's very relevant. Yeah.
So a virus, once the structure is disrupted, it won't be able to infect the host.
Definitely. So this is where I think right now in the general public, we're talking about, for example, the test we're using right now is actually called a PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. So that is zoomed into the genetic material. So this is, for scientists, we really have to differentiate between a live virus, has an intact structure, the lipid is intact, and that can transmit and cause disease. Versus if you have a little bit genetic material left, like environmental contamination, we can still get a PCR positive, but the virus is gone. So this is kind of a very, very difficult. The only way we can detect is nucleic acid material, and this may or may not mean that we still have a live virus. Okay, so that's why I think it's very important to keep the hygiene. At least we can get rid of the live virus that's transmissible. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that raises a good point. Like, even though a virus can be detected there, it doesn't mean that it is available to infect
That's
a host.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. But some readers have raised this question, on our social media channels. With all this talk about personal hygiene and social distancing, how safe is it if we were to ride a public transport and be exposed to viruses lingering on the surface? Is it okay?
Well, I think, scientifically that I always say in an outbreak like COVID-19, I cannot advise a measure which is 100% efficient or safe, right? So I think that, if you avoid contact, even if you have to go to a public transportation, the chance, in Singapore to get a contaminated MRT, for example, is very low, right? The other thing is that, as I say, I always say, I have said this to Straits Times, I have said to many media outlet, a closed environment like a lift, I think, that everybody push the same button. Yes. That's much more, riskier than any other environment. And so you just have to be cautious, So I carry 70% ethanol all the way now, just spray on your hands. Or the other thing is because if the hand is contaminated, you're still not going to be infected. only when you rub your nose or your eye. So you just need to be cautious that when you go to public, even if you have touched lift a button or open the door, and then as soon as you get to office or home, wash hands. So that's, I think, the best you can do.
I like to share what I learned from the ministerial task force experts within. I think there's a very good guideline or frame to look at this exposure or risk to this exposure, and it is in this DID, duration, intensity, and density. So if you are in a situation where there are a lot of people, the number of people is huge, like the one that we had at the mosque in Malaysia, that is high density, and you want to avoid that kind of situation. The other one is intensity. How close are you to the person? How much you're interacting with the person, and that was very apparent in the case of the Jurong Safra case, where they were going after that to the karaoke and they were passing mics and maybe even hugging each other. And then duration. How long were you there? And the rough guideline is about 30 minutes is okay. And therefore, if you can break this in any social setting, social norm, you can ensure that you have short duration, you have low intensity, and you have low density, then you are safer than not. So I think that's how we are also advising places of worship, hawker centers, and that's why you see this social distancing. Don't stay too long in the hawker center, eat and go. And don't stay too close to anybody. So is it safe to go to a hawker center? I say it's yes. But the issue is how do you enforce or how you implement in these new social norms so that the DID is also being observed.
Okay. So, on that note on cleanliness and disinfection of premises, we have seen reports about how some premises are disinfected and cleaned up after they have been exposed to patients with COVID-19. Mr. Tai, your department is in charge of providing guidance to such cleaning up measures. So, can you just take us through what is the process like?
Okay. I think as Prof. Wang has said that the evidence does suggest that surfaces that are contaminated with COVID-19 virus is able to transmit the disease. So that's where NEA comes in. Basically, NEA has developed a set of interim guidelines for disinfection together with MOH and NCID. So we work with premises owners to ensure that they follow the guidelines closely. So whenever there's a case that is being reported to us, we actually will contact the premises owners and work with their cleaning crews. Okay, and ensure that they wear the proper personal protective equipment, and then ensure that they use the right disinfectant. Okay, and we walk them through all those frequently touched areas. So for disinfection, I think a key point to note is that we must be aware of where are those so-called frequently touched areas. We call it high touch points, where examples, lift buttons, rails, handrails, benches, tabletops, or even your workstation, your desktops. So we work with them to ensure that these are properly wiped down with the disinfectant that is effective for COVID-19 virus. Then for those residential premises, there are two groups of people we work with. Okay, the first group is actually the household that has actually encountered a confirmed case. So by the time it's reported to us, the case will probably have already hospitalized, but the household members are likely to be quarantined. So that's where NEA comes in to advise them how to all the proper disinfection procedures, the kind of disinfectant to use. So NEA, we have actually prepared a small little disinfection kit that comprises of mask, gloves, and a bottle of disinfectant, and together with the hard copy of our guidelines. So we visit the household, we explain to them, run through the guidelines with them, explain to them what are the things that they should take note of. And at the same time, we also offer our assistance to them if they should want to dispose of certain materials they think is contaminated. For example, a pillowcase, a bed sheet, then we can arrange for a disposal service to dispose these as biohazardous waste.
Okay, so I mean, you mentioned about when you clean residential properties, you recommend a special kind of disinfectant. For our readers tuning in, they might be interested if they can also get hold of such disinfectants to disinfect their own houses. I mean, do you have any guidelines on, just now Prof. Wan talked about and ensuring that hand sanitizers are at least 60 to 70% based in alcohol? Is that similar for the disinfectants?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, we have a list of disinfectant we publish on our website together with the active ingredients. In fact, most households have this common household bleach. They'll be very effective. Yeah. So actually, everywhere we go, we actually recommend you have household bleach. Okay, that will actually effectively disinfect.
Okay. So how does this cleaning process differ from regular cleaning processes?
Okay. Okay. Let's take for example. Okay, if we go into a housing estate. Okay, let's say. So we work with the town councils. We basically run through with them. Where are all those high touch points? Okay, the frequently touched areas. So we begin from the confirmed case, the unit floor. Then we think through basically what is the footsteps of everyday residents that he need to go through and surfaces that he need to touch in order to commute from point A to point B. So from the unit level, probably the first thing you need to touch is the lift button. So that need to wipe down, to be wiped down with disinfectant instead of lift. Then when he goes down, okay, in the void deck, any benches, any tabletops, letter boxes, okay, or the nearby playgrounds or exercise areas. Yeah, so we really try to put our mind into the mind of a normal residents, that things that they have to touch in order to move around. Yeah, so that is something that we pay attention to, and that the cleaning crew might not be so aware of this area. They just sweep the floor, but we actually raise their awareness to all these kind of areas that they need to wipe down.
Okay, so this is for like the cleaning standards for the current outbreak.
Yes.
Okay, but regular cleaning standards, like regular cleaning standards, you won't have to put yourself in the shoes of a patient and actually walk through while doing the regular routine cleaning.
Yeah, but I think following from this this outbreak, I think it's good that all cleaning companies and cleaning crews should be very aware of surfaces. Yeah, so we should adopt this higher level of cleaning, okay, for their regular cleaning.
Okay. So on that note, I mean, that is what the new SG Clean Task Force established earlier this month aims to do. So Minister, can you just give us a run through about what this task force is about and what it aims to do?
So firstly, we look at the three areas that we want to emphasize, like I mentioned just now. The first line of defense, your personal hygiene, setting social norms for different settings, and then getting the cleaning companies to up their cleaning standards and also frequency of cleaning. So that's the gist of what we do. Initially, when we started, we focused on hawker centres because MUA and NEA are running them. Right now, I know all of them are already certified for SG Clean, but we want to do more. Where the cleaning frequency and standards are being implemented, that's all right. In fact, more than 5,000 premises have already got the SG Clean standard. But we want to ensure that this is also being implemented beyond the hawker centres, which is why the Ministerial Task Force for SG Clean was formed, so that every sector of the government, whole of government effort, as well as whole of society effort can be then rolled out. That means schools, that means shopping centres, that means tourist attractions, everywhere where there's high traffic and where public need the confidence that they can congregate. Even having said that, given the new situation that has evolved day after day, we also have to put in different kind of social norms even as we up the cleaning standards. So in the past, we tell people go to the hawker centres. Don't stay home. Don't be frightened of going out. But then, as we are also getting, as we see today, more and more imported cases, particularly from Singaporeans returning from studies overseas, the risk of people not observing quarantine or stay-home notice and then going out to these places where we are not controlling the numbers of people who ought to be there is now very apparent. Therefore, we start to also shift the kind of social norms that need to be implemented. So one of the things that we are doing is social distancing, and to make that more a norm now, and then implement that also through infrastructure. So as you see in hawker centers, now more and more of them, right now 41 of them have got crosses or lines on seats to guide patrons that please sit further from each other. And the same thing is also being rolled out for places of worship, gyms, even spas, so that people know when you are in this kind of place, this is how we should be behaving, how we should be interacting with each other. So that, like I mentioned just now, that those DID, the duration, intensity, density norms are also being implemented in these areas.
So, Minister, I mean, just now you talk about ensuring the cleanliness of public spaces beyond places like hawker centres. So currently, under the SG Clean Task Force, will premises that don't adhere to the standards be penalised?
Well, this is the thing about being Singapore and Singaporean. I will be very sad and, in fact, very upset that we have to enforce something that we could actually do voluntarily. It's just like littering, I mean, why do we need to impose a very big fine for people to prevent them from littering? And actually, the number of people who actually litter are very few. I think Edward has
I'll
told me.
talk about that later.
They are not, the recalcitrants are very few.